a lot about the tournament. We've heard a lot about the World Cup. We've heard a lot about the Arab Cup. What I wanted to do is give you kind of the top 10 things, the top 10 sustainability features that we have in our stadiums, kind of a facts that you can keep in your information. We also have the stadiums in that stall over there, so if you want more information, we can talk you through what the stadiums look like. But as far as we go, let's see what my favorite top 10 are for the stadiums of us. So I don't need to tell anybody here what the definition of sustainability is. You're all here because you care about sustainability in some form or other, or you just happen to be walking past and see something green. So either way, the definitions that we have is that we have to try and make sure that what we're building now allows our children the same kind of facilities in their time. For those of you who've been in Doha a long time, you know that there's a lot of changes happened in a short amount of time. And for those of you that are new, you think it always looked like this, but in reality it didn't. And so for that, we also have to think about what is the best way we can do our development and make sure that we are sustainable in the way that we do it. So first, a few facts and figures about the FIFA World Cup. We hear about it, but actually what does it mean? So we're one host nation in Qatar. In other countries, we know that you have to fly between different host cities, but in us, we're in a very compact space, and so we won't be doing any flying in between the games. We have 32 teams playing. They're playing 64 matches over 28 days. We have 8 stadiums. And at the beginning of the tournament, which is the busiest time, there will be up to 4 games being played a day. So you're going to have to choose your teams carefully. We're going to have over 1 million visitors, 150,000 fans a day in specific locations, and over 500,000 visitors in the very high peak times that we have. That's a lot of people, a short amount of time, so we have to be very careful about how we're planning everything, and our responsibility was to make sure that the stadiums that we've built are done in a good way. I think they're very pretty, don't you? Each one of these stadiums looks absolutely amazing. If I could tell you the amount of work that went into designing it, to the arguments behind it, to the meetings that we had, to the decisions that had to be made, that would be a whole other talk. But for today, let's talk about all the good things. Our biggest issue, and the one we get asked about all the time, is about energy efficiency. So we live in a hot country. Today it's a little bit humid, so we understand the difference in the temperature. But we're going to be hosting the games in a temperate time, right? So we're going to be hosting it between November and December. And for those of you that live here, that's quite a nice time of weather. We had to make sure that the stadiums were designed to be energy efficient. We don't want to waste energy. For us, energy is something that doesn't come for free. We need to make sure that we're managing it the best way we can. Our stadiums have really cool designs in them that have the air vents coming at different layers of the stadiums. Some of them are even underneath the seats, and some are near the pitch. And we'll show you some of the pictures there. And once you see the games coming up in the next months, you'll see how different it feels when you're in there. The designs that we have now, as per like what a usual stadium would be, is that we're saving 30% energy. So that means we've done a lot of changes, and we've been able to make a lot of savings for it as well. In Qatar, we know we live in a desert. Water isn't something that comes plentifully. We have to do a lot of desalination in order to make sure we have enough water. So it is fairly our responsibility to make sure we don't waste the water. In our stadiums, what does that look like? That looks like having very efficient taps, showers, any kind of water devices that we have are very efficient. It also makes sure that all the work that we did during construction, we also did very carefully. We had to do a lot of dust management. We didn't want to have a dusty site where people would drive by and complain about our site. And so we had to find really creative ways of making sure we were suppressing the dust. I think the most interesting thing for me is that we have a modular design in all of our stadiums. So in all of our stadiums, the top tier can come out, which means about 20,000 seats per stadium can be removed after the games and reused in a different function. Don't tell anyone, but the coolest stadium, I think, is the Ras Al Khaimah Stadium. And if you tell anyone, I'll know where you heard it. I'll show you the stadium over there if you'd like, but it is a modular stadium. It is a container-based stadium. It looks like a Lego function, so for you guys that have kids, you know what this feels like. It was a design when we saw it that we weren't sure we could ever build. But actually, it's really cool, and once you get through it, you'll see. It's containers that are standard in size. They've been made in China. They've been made exactly according to our specifications, and they've come to Qatar, and we've just literally put them in place, installed them, connected them, whatever we needed to do to make them look into a really cool stadium. Each one of them, thanks, Mommy. Each one of them is color-coded, so all the yellow stadiums are the same, all the yellow containers are the same, all the blue containers are the same, all the green containers are the same. And once you're in there as a fan, you'll know where to go and what to do just by following your colors. There are 974 containers. And why is 974 so important to us in Qatar? It's our calling code, that's right. I think that was a cute number thing. So to build 7 stadiums and refurbish one, we had to use a lot of stuff. And when you're talking about stuff, you need to make sure, well, we went to make sure that it was sustainable. And what does this look like? This looks like trying to find the most materials available in Qatar and in the region. Keep in mind, we also went through the blockade at the time that we were building, so we had to make a little bit of adjustments in where we got our materials. It's about finding the materials that are most sustainable, materials that have recycled content in them, materials that have least impact on our environment, materials that make sense for us sustainably. We were looking at things like finding carpets that had recycled content in them, simple, basic things, but all of these added up to lots of work for people to check what sustainability was, to talk to all of the material providers in the country who were looking at us and saying, why do you care about sustainability? Here's your steel, for example. But so we had to do a lot of work with our content and our providers to be able to find sustainable ways of doing this. Transportation. I took the metro to come here today. I couldn't have done that a few years ago. And all of our stadiums have some way of being able to get to it. The metro is an easy one. There are bus feeders as well. And this was something we couldn't have thought about a few years ago. But it's really great that all the teams developing the stadiums have been working with the transportation communities to be able to find the best locations for them to be able to service as well the stadiums. Construction waste. So while it's very exciting to build a stadium, when you build anything, you also generate a lot of waste. And so what we wanted to avoid doing was sending all of our waste to a landfill. But that doesn't make a good story. That's not very sustainable at all. In our stadiums, we had very strict requirements on what could be done to the waste during construction. And I'm very pleased to say that we exceeded all the expectations that even we had as the requirement putters, if that's the right word. On average, we were about 70% diversion from landfill, which meant the waste that we generated, 70% of it, we found a way to reduce, reuse, or recycle. In Ras Al Babood Stadium, again, my favorite, we recycled up to 90%, so that was something we were very proud of. Have you guys been around to any of the stadiums? Which one was your favorite so far? That's right. And what you'll notice around all of these is what? A lot of green spaces. So this is something that Qatar has changed. When I grew up here, there weren't so many parks or green spaces, but now there's hectares and hectares of green spaces that the communities can use after the tournament, and even before. I mean, it's a great place now that the weather's a lot better for people to go. And it's so beautiful. Once you're there, you don't even think that you're here. So being able to have all of these green spaces is something that is one of our achievements. Another really interesting thing related to this is that we actually built a nursery for all of the plants, all of the trees that were on our sites that we had to remove so that we would avoid damaging them in construction time. So we transplanted these trees specifically in a nursery, we grew them there, and now one by one they're making their way back into the stadiums, which is a really cool story to have as well. Something that we don't think about as sustainability, but actually it's a very important part, is culture and heritage, because that forms part of your belonging, your understanding, and how something means to you. Over the weekend, you would have seen a lot of the communication about Al Thumama Stadium, which we opened, and how it looks like الذي, and then of course the tent in Al Bayt as one of the most welcoming parts of a local community as well. Even these are things you have to consider about when you're putting your sustainability requirements together. Accessibility has been something very important to the SC from when we even put the bid together. We'd committed to being an accessible tournament, as well as a carbon neutral tournament, as well as a sustainable one. And we've had members of the accessible community come and check that everything works in a way that is accessible to them. And even if you see some of the older stadiums and then the newer stadiums, there's many more seats, it's much more accessible, and the locations are all around the stadium, so you're not in a specific location. It's any seat that you want to choose has a great view. We've been able to work to make the specifications, the right heights, the right break lengths, the right distances, the right companion seats, all of these things to make sure that all members of our community have the same kind of access to watch games. And finally, something that I think we don't talk about often enough is knowledge sharing. So at the height of our construction period, we had almost 100 people working in construction sustainability. This was from the client, the contractor, the construction supervision consultant, their consultants, their subcontractors, their subconsultants. And so what we did is once a month, we got everybody that worked in sustainability in our stadiums together. First in stadiums, where we had spaces to show each other what we were doing in our stadiums. We created a little bit of healthy competition about being able to say, okay, well, where do you recycle wood? And oh, well, how have you been able to address this requirement? And I'd like to say that was one of the very rewarding things that we had done, to be able to create this space where we're all able to learn from each other. And it didn't have to have this, can I talk to this person, or can I talk to that person? Do I have permission? It became a really good network of people that were able just to ask each other questions whenever they needed to. So those were my top 10 of sustainable features in our stadiums. I didn't want to put each stadium and break it down because that's not very exciting. But this way I wanted to talk generally about what can be done when you're planning what to do in the times ahead. Again, our stadiums are over there if you want to have a closer look. We'd be happy to tell you more about them. Thank you very much.